Hi, I'm James VanOsdol. I host the nightly Car Con Carne podcast, which you can hear on all audio platforms and watch on YouTube and Facebook. I'm here today with Brent Sopel. Brent is a retired hockey player. As a defenseman, he played professional hockey in the NHL, KHL, and AHL. In 2010, he won the Stanley Cup with the Chicago Blackhawks. Brent Sopel is dyslexic. He's also the founder of the Brent Sopel Foundation. And though he's known for playing professional hockey, he would like for his legacy to be that he did everything within his power to assist dyslexic children everywhere. This is another episode of the You Are Not Alone series. And our guest this week is actor Kenny Johnson, who's done a ton of stuff in TV and film. And you can currently see him as a third-generation SWAT officer, Officer Dominique Luca, on the TV show SWAT.
I almost feel like you're a brother from another mother, you and me. Growing up on a farm, athlete, dyslexic. Well, we'll talk about the modeling career. I missed that. I know Ford came knocking on your door, but they ran right past me to you. But so many similarities about you and me. And so taking time to talk on the podcast is, I want to first of all thank you and thank you for being so open about dyslexia. And anytime we can talk about this with somebody else and change a kid's life, and through all your struggles and all your accolades, as a kid, did you feel isolated? Because I know I did.
Yeah, I mean, again, I didn't find out till I was like 23 when I got tested for it. So I knew nothing about dyslexia or reading problems. And back when I grew up in the middle of Vermont on a farm, it's not like my parents like tuned in to see what's going on. It's just like go to school, get good grades. And, I think I fell behind when I was in first and second grade. I remember not being able to read. And then by third and fourth grade, I still couldn't read. And by the time I got to like seventh and eighth grade, I remember being called on a lot. And a lot of, kids in class would just start laughing at me because I didn't know what the words were saying. So I would guess. And I didn't know the word the from them to that. And then you give me a bigger word. I had no idea what the hell that was. And I just thought, the whole time I thought I'm stupid. I studied really hard. I tried to understand what I was reading, yet I had no idea. And so, I think teachers would pass me because of common sense and, they would see maybe nothing was wrong with me, from a one-on-one point of view. But when
you're a good-looking kid, you're a model.
Yeah. Whatever, dude. I mean, I don't know, man. All I know is like when I got to high school, the same thing happened. I couldn't read all the way through high school. And, I didn't used to get in fights, but what would happen is I would shut down and become really isolated. And so I had, I developed major OCD. I don't know where that came from, but I had dyslexia. I had major OCD that kept me in my head all the time, and I couldn't read. So I just thought something's wrong with me and I'm a stupid idiot, but you get through however you get through. And not to say that I'm proud of how I got through, but I didn't know anything was wrong with me. So I would, I would cheat. I would write answers. I would, do anything I could, hire people to take tests for me, get into college, played football and baseball. And it was the same thing. I had to, and again, I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but break into, professors' offices or become friends with their, assistants, and they would steal things from me, or I would pay kids to take, my tests for me, in these like huge classrooms that the professor never know who I was anyways. And it feels horrible to say that, but I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I just knew the only way I could keep playing sports or to go forward was to figure out a way, because I never thought like, well, I have a reading problem. I just thought I'm a stupid person. So I would get all the books that were underlined yellow, and I would concentrate on, secondhand books on who had put yellow. And I thought, well, that must be the answer, And so I thought if I could learn that and remember it in a test, possibly I could match it up. But I mean, I barely got through in most classes, and whatever, man. I mean, that's kind of what it was. And, until I got into acting, and that was the last thing I wanted to do because I knew I couldn't read. So if I couldn't read and I had this OCD and I had major phobias with people, like if I would get within 5 feet of somebody I didn't know, I'd break out in a sweat, so yeah. Anyways, that's how it all began.
No, honestly, it's like you're telling my life all over again from the farm. I miss my farm. My uncle's on the farm with 400 head of cattle, and I thought I was dumb, and I didn't find out until I was 32 years old.
Wow.
And
Wow.
last time I went for my driver's ed test, I broke in hives.
Yeah.
I was petrified to do my driver's ed test at, I don't know, I was 35 years old, because
Right,
I was
right.
like, oh my, am I going to read this right? Am I going to get this wrong? Am I, so never be ashamed of what you did, your defense mechanism. You're a brilliant man. You found a way around it. Yes, did we have to break the laws and twist and turn things? Yeah, but that got you to where you are today because you're resourceful.
Well, no, thank you. I mean, that is one thing is like, I would say growing up, I had a dad who was a big physical guy, used to, hit a lot and, kind of choke and, was super, controlling, Swedish background. Well, he was from Sweden. My mom was from Latvia. So he was a big Swede. He was like 300 pounds and like 6'4". So, it was easy for him to grab me, just, basically, so anyways, there were a lot of like, you're stupid, you're an idiot, you're never going to amount to anything. And that's all I heard my whole life. And so I think when again, my weird thing about the modeling, I came out here and I didn't know what I was going to do. And somebody had said, no, get into modeling. So everyone was like, no, all the modeling agencies, you can't do this. You'll never do this. You don't have the look. And this is like 35 years ago. They're like, it's like impossible. It's just like, this is a pipe dream. You're just not right. So I got rejected by everybody and picked up with a small agency. And I went on a bunch of go-sees and you get what, 500 no's, but then one yes. And who's the yes is Tommy Hilfiger, right? He's starting up a new line and he's like, you're perfect for my line. So I go with Tommy Hilfiger and then I start doing campaigns for all these startup companies. And then all of a sudden the bigger agencies are all like trying to come to my photo shoot saying, oh my God, we've never had anyone like you. We have nobody like you. We'd love to represent you. I'm thinking like, I went 3 years in a row. You guys all said I sucked. I don't have a look.
Screw you guys.
But no, I didn't say a word. In my head, I thought that, but I thought, you know what? I'm not going to hold it against anyone. I just know like whatever my destiny is in my control. People can say whatever they want, but I always believe human beings aren't in control of where you go in life and what your destiny is. I always had a weird epiphanies with something that felt like there was something else out there in control and it wasn't a person. So as long as I believed in that, I thought, no, this will happen in whatever space and time, its own time, it'll happen. I call it God space and time. It's like, whatever's meant to be will be. If you believe it, then it's possible. And so that's how the acting came about. My friend, he knew Stallone and he was a kid. And he wrote a film and he brought it to me. And I was like about 7 months after I moved out here. And he was a trainer and he was a good looking guy. And, and he's like, look, I wrote this film for you and me. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to do it. He goes, yeah, but I wrote it for you and me. I'm like, I don't want to do it. And I didn't tell him because I couldn't read and I couldn't really understand if I tried to read. So I kept saying no for like a month. And he's like, Kenny, I wrote this literally for you and me. I know you. I know your voice better than anybody. So I said, all right, if you can get somebody to say it out loud to me, and if I can learn it, I'll try it. So that's how I got all the dialogue down. And then I call it my Jim Carrey like moment. So I'm ready to start filming my first scene. I'm standing there, I know nothing about acting. I'm phobic of everybody. And, the last thing in the world I want to do is come face to face with people I don't know and have interactions and literally have people watching me do something. It just freaked me out, So I remember somebody yelling roll sound. And when they said action, it was like, well, I saw a TV show the other day that had a scene in it like this, but I said action, everybody froze. It was like everyone walking or moving just froze. And it felt like time stood still and I was in the center of the universe. And this thing kind of whooshed through me and said, this is what you're going to do the rest of your life. And then whooshed out the back. And it was one of those moments. And as soon as it left, everyone started moving again. And we went forward. We did the scene and we shot the film. And it was, and it ended up winning a bunch of awards for a student film festival. But it got this thing in me going, okay, this is now what I have to do. What I don't want to do is be around people. So what do I have to do? I have to learn how to now get an acting teacher or an acting class. I have to figure out what the hell this thing was that felt like a real voice telling me where to go in life. Because I had been lost for a long time and this thing set me in that direction. And again, because of the reading disability, I'm like, I'm screwed. I'm completely screwed. And I have to be face to face with people I don't know. I'm going to sweat. I'm like, all the phobias came out. And that's what I did. I got into a couple classes and got thrown out because they thought I was being difficult because I couldn't read it. And I would tell them, they open the book and start reading, and I'd open it and I'd go, I can't read it. And they go, read it. And I'd be like, I literally can't read this. They go, if you don't read it right now, you're going to get out of my class and don't ever come back. And I would just shut the book and walk out. I mean, it's similar to, I think, your story when I was listening. And I was like, I don't understand what's wrong with me, but I can't read, And then my friend got an acting coach to come to the house that I was staying at. And he said, okay, let's start out. Let me give you this paragraph to read. And so I looked at it. I had no idea what the hell was on there. So I made up most of I didn't say what was there because I didn't know what was there. So he sat there and he looked at me kind of dumbfounded. And he goes, can you tell me what you just read? And I go, no. I said, I have no idea. He goes, okay, well, read this. And he gave me something else. And again, I made it up and I couldn't decipher words from, what the hell was there. I just made up a thing that wasn't on the paper. And he goes, have you ever heard a thing called dyslexia? And again, for me, that was, 23. So that was a bunch of years ago. And they didn't really talk about that. And I said, no. And he goes, well, I'd love for you to go to this institute called the Stillman Dyslexia Institute and get tested. And, I was at a second grade reading level when I got tested, and it affected my hearing also. So I was missing, what did they say? I think I was 63%. I was understanding what people said. And about the whatever it was, 37% I was missing. So what happened with my life is I would get in a lot of fist fights sometimes, but not because of that. But it would be like misunderstandings. I would misunderstand everybody, and I would get in arguments all the time because I would fill in what I didn't hear. So I would think they were talking, and I didn't know this was a form of dyslexia, and I would always look down to concentrate what they were saying, and it would always take a few seconds to go into the brain, process, and come back to what they said. But they were way on with the conversation by then, so I was filling everything in, man. And it was like I would get in arguments and misunderstandings. Everyone was like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "What's wrong with me?" I'm like, "What the F is wrong with you, man?" It's like, so that was it. But like you say, what it did is I think all the rejections and all the no's and this thing getting in me about this is where I'm supposed to go in life. I just thought of all the casting people, even in acting when I started out, and they'd make me cold read. And again, dude, I'd be the worst cold reader in the world and break out in sweats and be a freaking awful reader. And everyone's looking at each other like, this guy is awful. And they get me out and call my agent's manager saying, why is he acting? He's the worst actor we've ever seen. And in my head, I kept thinking, like, if you give me a week on this and I can get it and I will dive in and understand, but on the spot, I'm a dead man. And so, I just worked really hard and spent years away from auditioning and just took classes and concentrated and worked, like you say, somebody might learn in 40 minutes would take me maybe 30 or 40 hours, to get down. And I'm like, if that's my process, I'm like, that's what I have to do. That's the only, I have no excuse. It's either I do that or I can't do what I'm doing. And so I just put in way more time and methodical ways of breaking information down and understanding it, putting the story in my head, visualizing it. And then the last thing is getting the words down, which for me are just a mind F-U-C-K. You know what I mean? So then I spend so many effing hundreds of hours on trying to get the words correct. I can get everything around it correct, but the words itself, and then here I am and trying to, be an actor because I felt like it was my calling, not because I'm like, I want to be an actor or I want anyone to know me. I don't really give a shit about any of that stuff, So
what's so interesting to me is the way you started out. That's how you began your acting career. Here you are in the present day. You've been in an innumerable amount of shows that people are super passionate about. I know you realized at that moment, this is what I need to be. This is what I need to do. But could you have ever imagined, here we are in 2021, that this would be your lot in life, that you'd be comfortable acting, well-known?
I mean, I don't know if anyone knows me, but that's nice for you to say.
Come on now. No,
I don't.
You can toot your own horn because we all do. I'm a fan.
I'm a hermit.
Brother from another mother.
Okay, I know you now, so I know a few people,
But that's the great thing about that's the great thing about character actors, isn't it? Maybe they're not household names, but they're the ones who keep people coming back to the show every week.
That's wild. I mean, this is like my 8th series I've been a series regular on, and this is everyone leading up until this, I've been really particular about like, okay, if something told me I'm supposed to go down this journey with acting, right? And this is my calling. I had to, like at first, I think what happened was I had so much kind of dysfunction and pain inside that I wanted to get that out through my acting. And something was holding me back saying, no, it's the wrong reason. So I spent a lot of time going to therapy, reading, philosophies, different religions, and trying to just work through my own BS until I could get to a point where I could filter things through me neutrally, and then when I was honestly at that point, work started coming like nonstop. And I realized that I could, without telling the world any of the pain or struggle or whatever that, that I've been through in life, you could do it through a character and use a true voice and never have to tell anyone that you actually experienced a lot of what you're actually in and kind of the characters you're playing. But there's a truth to it and an honesty underneath. And so that kind of happened for me. And then I've been really weirdly picky about stuff. Like people normally, actors will be like, I want to be an actor. So they audition hundreds of times, if not like 1,000 times, and they get callbacks and they might do, pilots or whatever. And I've always been like, I don't want to go out on anything unless it's super different and interesting for me. So I would get like 3 or 4 auditions, maybe 5 auditions a year at the most, which is unheard of if you're ever going to even book a job. But I thought, no, I know this is what I need to do for me. My agents are like, you're never going to have a career. My agents, managers say you'll never work. And I'm like, okay, you say that I'll never work, but I go, I know this is what I have to do for me. So I go, if you send me too much bullshit, I go, you're going to be fired. And I've fired so many people. And they're like, well, who are you to fire me? I'm like, you're right. I'm nobody. But I go, this is what I have to do for me because it feels honest and it feels like this is my purpose. So I go, if I'm not going to listen to myself, then I go, why am I even doing this? So that's always been my motto, is to try, follow the writing and follow really what makes it interesting and you could possibly make a difference,
So as soon as you found out and you were okay with you is when your life changed and when God spoke through you. Because to me, I had that moment in rehab, day 1 in rehab. I've been sober 4.5 years. So let me look at the calendar. I got a calendar. How many days? It's 1,688 days. God spoke through me and said, you're supposed to be here. My life's changed ever since. And for you to be, you weren't being picky. You were listening to yourself. You were finally okay with who you are, who God created, and all that pain, you dealt with it. And then you could be picky because you're listening to this, your heart.
That's absolutely, I'm glad you said that. So that's, that's it. That's my God voice. And it's like, I don't talk about it that much, but when I was, I never do actually, 5 years old, kidnapped by a cult, me and this little girl. And so a lot of things happened that I grayed out most of what happened just because it was too messed up. And so I think as I got older, that's where the OCD came in and it developed and then it became kind of debilitating. And then it was like, there was a period where, I didn't want to be here because I knew there's something inside of me knew I wasn't normal. So things happened. And, I'd been in car crashes. And I specifically remember my first time for me that I found, higher power going around a corner about 80 miles per hour up a hill in Vermont, taking a turn, and it just rained and the tail end spun and it shot off the cliff and it went over a brook and it went into the ledges and it just crunched. And I remember everything happening in slow motion, but I remember I had no seatbelts on because back then they didn't obviously wear seatbelts, but that this invisible thing held me in place. I felt these arms come around me and hold me, and everything happened in slow motion. And as the car crunched, and normally you would just slam up against the steering wheel and all this stuff would happen, something held me literally in place as it all crunched. And as it hit and then crunched, and then it all dropped down into the brook. And I didn't know if I was dead or alive. So I was sitting there freaking out and pinching myself. I couldn't feel anything. I got out of the window. I was able to get on top of the hood. And some people had come, it was like a mile hill all the way up. And some people were at the top coming down when they saw that me go off. And I just remember they looked down and then they started calling out, "Are you okay?" And I was like so adrenaled out. I was screaming. I was like screaming, like, whoa! I'm like going. I said, "Can you see me? Can you see me?" And they're like, "Yeah." And so I'm like, I'm pinching myself. I'm like, I'm not dead. I'm like, what the hell just happened? I'm like, and I just remember, like, I had gone to church, and I didn't really know what God was, but that thing that held me in place was something that let me know for the first time there's something out there, and it was keeping me here. And there were, you know, quite a few times where things would speak through me as clear as day, and I knew it was the God voice. Was, it's not time to go. It's not time. You're here for a reason. Until I figured out you're going to stay here. And that's what, you know, kept happening over and over, man. And I was like, you know, I ended up, you know, yeah, I'm not even going to tell my history of being in jail or getting in trouble or whatever. But it was just a point where something just finally said, you know, wake up. But it was really keeping me away from anything horrible happening to me. But at the same time, it was wait until I found my voice. And that whole thing, you know, I realized at that moment something else was in charge. It wasn't a person saying you suck, you can't do this. And whatever is wrong with me, it's up to me whether I change that or work really hard to be the best that I can be, and then try to follow whatever that voice had said to me. If that, I don't know if that sounds, but that, yeah, that was kind of it. And yeah, yep, it was the God voice. Oh shoot, hang on real quick. Did I lose? There you are. Sorry.
Every Zoom call. That's just the way things have been for the past 13 months. There's always a drop off in audio. Someone disappears from video. Hey, you're on mute. Come back. Where'd you go? That's just part of the process, Kenny.
But Kenny, everything you said is to me speaks volumes, and I know exactly where every word you're saying. So again, you know, from the first conversation that Mike and I had, brother from another mother, literally, because we've walked the same path in different shoes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you should be proud of where you are, because, and I'll tell you right now, I'm proud of, you know, where you are for yourself. I'm very proud of you. You know, what you've gone through to be here today, and for the dyslexic community, myself, and the millions of others out there. We're very proud of you, and so thankful for what you do each and every day. And not only entertain, but you stand up for us.
Well, right back at you. I mean, for a guy being one of the top NHL players and doing what you do, it's a God-given talent, but you make the most of it. And, you know, there always feels like if you really listen to your pure voice inside, there's a journey for you to go to. And obviously you've been through a lot from what I heard too. And you're, you know, in a different way, but in the same way, you know, and it's, you know, I always like when I look, I mean, I always go back to going to where was I, in Paris, and I looked at a Van Gogh painting, and my teacher had told me, go somewhere to a museum, look at your favorite painting and write a monologue about it, however it hits you. And I went, and I was in the museum, the Louvre, and I remember getting really, it could have been at the Louvre, one down the road, the d'Orsay or something. But anyways, there was no one there, and there was a line, and you can't cross it. And I remember just looking back and forth, and I got closer and closer because I really wanted to study this painting. And I realized that Van Gogh had all these, and I did it with Van Gogh and also Monet. They had these flaws in their painting. There would be blotches, and there would be like a piece of sand, and maybe something got blobbed and fell off to the right or left or whatever. And I thought, okay, well, this is one of the most famous paintings in the world, yet it's not perfect. And I'm always like, you're always trying to be perfect or to be the best you possibly can, and you try for this perfection thing or this perfection syndrome. But I realized that you can only put in as much work as you can put in, and that at some point just do the best you can with it and let it go and put it into like whatever. I think, you know, what I was trying to get at is there's no exact right or wrong. And even for Monet or even for Van Gogh, who now all these years later are looked at as some of the most brilliant artists in the world, nothing was perfect about it. It just was what it was, and that's okay. And you interpret it the way you interpret it, and still that's okay. You know, the way I get in arguments with people all the time now because I think I hear things wrong and I interpret it different. Or if I go to see a play, like my friend starred in this play Rent, right? And he was one of the leads. And I remember watching the play and I was crying through it. And I was going through all these emotions, like, you know, in New York City. And at the end of the play, because I think he knew that I had problems with understanding things. He didn't know why, but he said, how'd you enjoy the play? I said, dude, it just killed me. And I told him what I thought I saw. And he goes, that's not what it was about at all. I go, what? I go, what are you talking about? So then he explained it to me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch the afternoon or the evening, you know, to watch that show to see if I can understand it. And then I would watch it through his eyes, or what he told me what it was really about. And I got affected, but I think I was more affected by the way my own brain interpreted it. So I just thought, you know, we are who we are, and we see and do things how we do. And I just figured there is no wrong. And for those people that are dyslexic and think, you know, as you know, and I'm just repeating stuff, like Einstein was dyslexic, Tom Cruise is dyslexic, Cher, yourself. There's so many people that have to have different wiring in their heads and figure things out in a way that in a million years a normal person probably couldn't figure out how to do, because that's just the way we're wired, you know. And I just look at it as a blessing, you know, like instead of a curse. I'm like, we're different. Like it's okay to be different, you know.
You're absolutely right. And the best part is that you got to be okay with yourself.
Yeah.
To understand that it's a blessing.
Totally. No, that's the biggest. Yeah, I think my biggest challenge was to come at a certain kind of peace with who I am as a human being, in order to then dive into, you know, what's really important. I mean, everyone's different, but yeah, I found that true for me, at least, you know.
Brent, with all those names Kenny just rattled off, I think your big challenge moving forward is getting Cher for this series. I would love to hear you talk to Cher.
Well, Kenny, you gotta start saying your name there. Tom Cruise, you know, Kenny Johnson. That goes hand in hand.
I didn't say my name. I didn't say my name. No.
Oh, you need to. I'm telling you.
I said Einstein, Tom Cruise, and Cher. I'm sure there's so many more, but
you got to put your name in there. You're bigger than Tom Cruise.
I'm just a messenger, man. I'm not part of that. I'm not part of that. I can arm wrestle, but that's about it.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's gonna lead us in. We'll lead us into that one. How did you go down that path? How did you come up with arm wrestling? Besides, I was a great arm wrestler at 3 a.m. drunk in the bar. But besides that,
until you cross my path, man, I would love to, like. I would love. That was the same guy who wrote this damn script. Yeah, believe it or not, dude. The guy wanted to be an actor so bad, and he was this yoked out trainer, and there were all these huge steroided out guys arm wrestling. And I just moved out here from going to college 3.5 years in Connecticut, going to Boston for about 3 months. And then I flew out here to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. So I got a job at a Jack LaLanne's, which is a health spa. And I was a nutritionalist there. So I was this, you know, 175 kind of skinny kid behind the nutrition bar making drinks. And these big guys were arm wrestling. And it was like right before they were closing down. And they were like, you know, 275, 300-pound guys just fucking going at it, right? And I'm watching them. And also one guy dominated everyone. And he's like looking around, and they're all adrenaled out, juiced out. And they're, what about you? What about you? And I'm like, and I'd never arm wrestled in my life. And I'm like 23. And I'm like, I said, dude, you're going to, you know, I don't know. I've never arm wrestled. He goes, well, just effing try it. I'm like, but you're like twice my size, bro. He goes, just effing try it. And they started getting angry. So I just jumped over the bar, ran over. I thought I'll get my ass whooped. And I got adrenaled out. And as soon as they said go, I flashed them in about a half second, right? And everyone's looking like, what the hell is that, right? And I just thought, that was weird. Yeah. So, yeah, I got fast twitch muscles, right? So my friend saw it, and he didn't tell me, but he found out where the world championships were that year, right? This is so stupid. This is like so weird. So one Saturday, he goes, oh, yeah, I'm taking you somewhere, like, you know, for a surprise. I'm like, okay. So we get in a car. We just drive hours and hours and hours. And I'm like, where are we going? He goes, it's a surprise. And I'm like, so we come up on the Civic Center after so many hours of driving, and they have world championships out in California at this particular place. And, or they did back then. And we pull up, and there's tons of cars. And I'm like, whoa, we're going to a concert. I'm like, I've never been to a concert. This is going to be really cool. So we get there, and I'm like, well, who are we going to see? He goes, not anybody. I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, I signed you up for the world championships arm wrestling. I go, you did what? He goes, I signed you up for the world. I said, bro, I've never arm wrestled in my life. He goes, yeah, but you beat that guy. I go, that's one guy. I go, I don't even know if I'm any good or not. He goes, well, you're never going to know until you try. And I'm like going, oh my God, you know? So of course, you know, at the same time I was working the juice bar, I was with an agency modeling, right? So I go to this is so stupid. I'm in this little mesh cut off shirt, right? With these white freaking tight jeans on. And I sign up and they're like, where are you from? And I just put Hollywood, even though I didn't live in Hollywood. They go, what do you do? I go model, and then whatever. So I fill it out, and then I get up there and they have weight classes. I weighed in, and then, they're going, okay, next class, blah, 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 to like 189. And they go next to the table from, what they say, from Hollywood, California, model Kenny Johnson. And everyone started booing and yelling. And I'm in the wings and I hadn't come out yet. And I'm like, fuck no. I said, I'm not going out there. They go, you got to go. I go, I'm not going out there, dude. Everyone's whistling and booing. And I'm like, I can't even believe that lady introduced me like that. I'm going, this is so messed up. And they're like, you have 60 seconds, and they count down. And the more they booed and the more they started calling me like, names that were kind of like bad, whatever, So I just, I thought as a 10, 9, I thought, you know what, F this, man. So I just darted out to the table. I just sat up and they're like, put me up. They, explained the rules, held the bar, and they said, go. And I slammed the guy, walked out. Every time there were whistles, they were calling me gay. You're like this, you're like that. Kill the model, kill the model. I thought, this is so effing embarrassing. So it's a double elimination. I went against a guy that I was like this far from beating, held him there for about 3 minutes, and I got tired, eventually lost. So I thought, okay, I'm in the loser's bracket. Won a few more times, and then I go against someone else, and I have him about a half inch from being pinned, and I'm, maybe 2-3 minutes, and I couldn't quite get him down. I got tired, so I lost. So I'm like, okay, see, I suck. I'm out. I'm out of the thing. There's nothing. So this guy comes over that I had beaten, and he says, listen, mate, he says, have you ever arm wrestled before? And I go, no. He goes, well, he says, you beat me and I'm the Australian champion. And he goes, those two guys you lost to? I go, yeah. They go, one of them was the number 2 guy in the world, and the other one was the number 5 guy in the world. And you were this close to pinning them. They go, and you've never arm wrestled? I go, no. And he said, let me train with you. So he ended up being Heath Ledger's uncle. So Heath Ledger's uncle trained me every year to get me ready for the championships. And it's weird. I love sports, but I didn't love arm wrestling because I think they were a bunch of, I don't know, they would scream at the refs. They were disrespectful. They would scream at each other. They would do things like almost getting fights up there. And I was used to at least sportsmanship and things that were, organized sports. So I didn't understand what was going on. And they'd be punching each other and slapping each other. And they got up there and I would flash them. And I'm thinking, screw you, dude. They're screaming at the refs how I cheated. And, I thought this sport is so weird. So I would do it every year, but it was something that I can't say it was the love of my life, but I did it because I happened to be okay at it, and then I ended up winning the world championships one year, right-handed and left-handed, the year that I almost didn't go. Cause I thought, what am I trying to prove? Like, what am I doing with my life? I'm not even an arm wrestler. I'm an actor, and I'm sitting there arm wrestling still. And then that year I won it all. And I think what I did, unfortunately for me, I felt nothing. I was like, number one, I'm up on the podium, and I felt completely empty. And I thought, I felt bad because people train all year long, like 8 hours a day to become really good. And you get up there and annihilate them without trying. It just felt not right. I thought it's cool to do as a hobby, or if somebody challenges you for money because they're like saying a bunch of shit about you. I'm good with that. But that was it. That's my whole arm wrestling deal, dude.
I like how you came out like a pro wrestling heel, like drawing heat from the crowd, just because you're a model.
Oh, dude, they were whistling, calling me the weirdest names, and when I'd see pictures of what I was wearing, I'm like, okay, I get it. But they were vicious because they had a bodybuilding competition and arm wrestling in the same day, so you had that whole crowd, and apparently that intro rubbed everybody the wrong way. Plus, no one knew who I was. I'm showing up for the world championships, and I'm this turquoise mesh, tank top that was so tight. And I'm like,
so basically what's in style right now is what you were wearing back then.
Hell yeah, dude. It's like hip and cool right now. Like no one would say anything, and now it's accepted, where back then it seemed like people were a little more harsh about everything,
What did you how did you train? What was the training? I don't know. How do you train for arm wrestling besides do some curls and do some kickbacks, or what?
No, it's arm wrestling against people who are as good as you or better in different weight classes gets you to be stronger in a certain kind of way. And learn techniques. Like for me, for some reason they say go, I'm literally this far from pinning a guy by the time they even get the O out, because like my hit is that fast for whatever reason. It just happens to be.
You got fast twitch fiber for being an athlete.
And yeah, and then you just have ligaments or tendon strength. Like, I threw about 90, 91 in baseball in college, which is not bad, but it's not great. But I have these weird ligaments. So like in football, I can't lift anything, but in college, I could tackle anybody from anywhere and I could go anywhere and take anybody down, like no problem. Yet if you put me in a gym, I cannot lift shit. I'm like, what is wrong? Like I'm weak, So lifting weights for me doesn't do anything. I mean, I'll do tons of like pull-ups and push-ups, but it's mostly practicing arm wrestling with guys, because then when you get into a match that I've gone into a match against a guy, he was like number 2 in the world, and we went 8 minutes and I couldn't even feel my arm, and they had to break us before the finals. There were 3 of us and we couldn't win. And they brought us back after they did the quarterfinals with everyone else. And then we went back at it, and literally this guy and I were locked. And if you were to, I pulled my arm down to let him win, because I thought, I can't even feel my arm. I go, because if we're going to go against the world champion, and I knew that guy and I knew how strong he was, I didn't have a chance. So I didn't care if I got second or third. I said, you go ahead, he's going to kill either one of us at this point,
I want to jump a little bit into your film career and TV career. The Shield was one of the best TV shows ever made. Discuss.
Thanks, man. No, it hands down. Sean Ryan wrote a brilliant script, and he did it when he was working on Nash Bridges, and he was under Carlton Cuse, who Carlton, created Bates Motel with Carrie Aaron. He did Lost. He had done Nash Bridges and gave Sean a shot at that show. And when Sean was like just driving around San Francisco, he kind of did his own take around the time when they had the Rampart, scandal going on. So he just did a show and then pitched it to FX, and they wanted to make it. And that was something also, which is weird, is I had I don't know, man. I mean, I had a thing like 6 months prior to that Deborah Quilla was going to cast me in something. And she had only done movies up until then as a casting director. She did like The Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption and films like that. And then all of a sudden, I get a call saying, she ended up casting me in that. And that was like one of the hottest scripts in Hollywood. And so they made the pilot. They didn't think they were going to pick it up because it was a little risky and it was just edgy. And I think what happened is we tested super high, and they had this guy from 90210 that starred in this lawyer thing that tested super high. And they had one tested 95, one tested 95. They had to make a choice. And I think Sean thought there's no way they're going to use him, because ours just felt a little too risky and edgy. And they ended up going with it because they thought, this is our first original script on TV, and we might as well go with something. We're either going to fly or sink. And I think it was Rupert Murdoch told them, this is your choice. And they told this guy, Peter LaGuardia and Kevin Riley, who ran the network at that time, that if this doesn't go or it doesn't hit, you guys, you're pretty much done. And so they went with it anyways. In that first year, we won Golden Globes, Michael won an Emmy and SAG award, and he won a Golden Globe himself. But the show kind of changed the way people looked at television. And it was, we were being sued by the FAA every week, and we were all on the front cover of the FAA about, language content, about, just content in general. And then, we had a lot of advertisers from the Bible Belt drop out, but they stuck with their guns. Like they thought, we're going to be true and authentic to what we want to put out there. And I remember Sean sticking up for what he wrote, because he goes, I'm not trying to do things for shock treatment. He goes, I'm just trying to be a storyteller and entertain. And he goes, I'm doing nothing to shock anybody. I just want to literally go down a road without monitoring what we're doing, to a degree. And so he did, and they backed him. Like they didn't give him any notes. They left him alone. And, now that network FX, is run by John Landgraf, and they've stayed true all these years later, like 19 years later, 20 years later, they're still doing these authentic shows that they let the showrunners do what they do and then get out of their way, and basically let the show run itself and let the writers and the creators, pretty much say what they want to say. So that really says a lot. And yeah, it was like a docudrama, the way they shot it, and the DP came up with a way of never being on the guy who was talking and always being like a fly on the wall, catching parts of conversations. And that way, as an audience member, you just felt like you were in on a secret and being let in on every scene. And you know, we didn't really, Sean didn't want it lit well. He wanted everyone not to be good looking, kind of just look raw and authentic. And then they would just, you know, edit it in ways that was like catching parts of a secret conversation. And it's the way it kind of played. And we didn't rehearse. We kind of marked it and then just went. Didn't know who was shooting who, when. We just went and did our stuff and trusted each other. And the show clicked. I mean, it was.
What a time for television. Between The Shield, Sopranos, The Wire. I mean, that was the revolution right there. I mean, all the shows we like and enjoy today owe a debt of thanks, I think, to shows like The Shield back at the turn of the century.
I feel like that's one of them. And yeah, I mean, The Wire, I think the guy who shot the pilot for that was Clark Johnson, and Clark Johnson shot the pilot for The Shield also. So he had a very specific, edgy, kind of raw feel to what he was going after. And I think they really paved the way for everybody to, you know, to take a chance and go out there. And, you know, television is what it is now because that was the start of it. But because there was no social media, not a lot of people know that. They just think like, what is The Shield? Like, who are they? And what did they didn't have, everyone thinks it was Breaking Bad. Like they think that they broke the barrier of everything, but that's right. Because social media started popping up right around when that was like, you know, starting to win awards and everything. So, but I think it did pave the way for a lot of what we see now. I mean, when I say FX is great, but I'm like Netflix and all these originals that people are putting a trademark on are so like twisted and dark, and these like takes on worlds and realities and the, you know, real things or the, you know, supernatural. It's so intriguing to me. I mean, where they allow television to go now, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about another show in the shared Shield universe. Let's talk about your life in SWAT. Like, do we have you in a rare window right now? Are your days like 12-hour shoots? Or like, what's your schedule look like for SWAT?
Because of the pandemic, they're down to 10-hour days. So we used to do like 14-hour days, and now they're down to 10 because of the COVID agreement. And then we just don't get any lunch breaks. So we kind of don't shoot with all of us in the same time, and they kind of break it up a little bit. So it's a great schedule. I mean, it's it's one of the easiest
diet too. You don't have lunch. That's why you're shredded and all jacked on the show.
Dude, whether they have lunch or not, I don't eat lunch. I'm like, I have a weird tick about I can't eat during the middle of the day when I'm working, because if I come back, I'm gonna be full. I'm gonna be lethargic. So I just drink iced coffee all day and Red Bulls and water.
Are you a Red Bull kid too? I'll do like 6 or 8 a day. So I told you, another brother from another mother. That's it. It's done.
Shamar, Jay, and me, I think that's all we live on is those effing Red Bulls all day long. Like we don't eat. It's Red Bulls. Then you sweat out like 12 pounds a day, and you just drink that. You know.
Please tell me, are you going with the sugar-free or the regular?
Sugar-free now.
Yes. All right. Listen, we need to work on Red Bull here for a couple sponsorships here. I think I bought stocks. We've been retired a long time ago.
I know, right? Sugar-free is clean, and it does the job, you know?
There it is.
It feels clean. It's like right to the point, you know?
Perfect. 12 ounces.
Yeah.
Kenny, you said earlier you're super picky about the parts you read for. I mean, looking at the roles you played, whether it's Dominique Luca working as Curtis on The Shield or Sons of Anarchy, whatever, you seem to have a very clear vision of who you are and what you want to be as an actor. So I guess the question is, what is your vision of yourself? How do you perceive yourself as an actor, as a commodity?
You know, that's interesting. I really don't know. I don't really perceive myself as you know, I know the kind of parts I like, and I know things that intrigue me, and I know because I could say it a million times over, I'm never going to get exactly what I would put out there. But if I know the kind of topics and issues and kind of character relationships within something and writing that speaks to you, it's like writing skeleton and these characters that are very different and touch on topics that normally are not discussed or out in the open. And for some reason, those are the things that speak to me. And then if it happens to be in my age range or in my energy or whatever, you know, those are the ones that I try to find the right managers and agents to only send me those scripts. And at that point, I still don't know. And a lot of like, getting Bates Motel was like, going from SOA to doing a remake of Prime Suspect with Maria Bello, to that creator then writing for Carlton Cuse and Carrie Aaron on Bates Motel for that really dysfunctional character, but it delved into a world that was so twisted and dark that it intrigued me. And then it got to touch a little bit on my personal thing of my experience of what happened to me and my best friend at a very young age, and how I never have got to deal with it, and yet I could breathe through a character to kind of just understand a little bit of something and humanize the character that was a really messed up, dark character. And even though, like, let's say we were the victims at 5 years old, it left so many weird scars and dysfunctions in my normal life that I've been trying to still to this day to come to terms with, and just be okay as a human being about it, that it just felt like, I don't know. I mean, to me, it was creatively pretty genius. And then when they threw out the idea, I just thought, oh man, this is such a dark, twisted, awesome thing. But at the other end, I'm like, well, this guy's a monster. How do I humanize it? And then I had to just, use the creative mind to just come up with a million ways to understand why someone would get to the point of what happened. And then, create your own back world from the age you were, for when you were born all the way up to where you're at, and what happened every year of the first 5 years to 10 to 15. And then if you could create something that would then maybe turn into the guy who you're playing, then that for me thought I'm breathing a truthful life to the character, and some people might hate it or like it, but I learned from Holly Hunter. I remember, trying to like do a character with her for 4 years. And anytime she would catch me trying to not go all the way into that place of being uncomfortable or dark, she would get in my face and say, you know what, screw what people think about you. You have to stay true to the character no matter what you do. You stay true and do not try to people please anybody. And so I thought, oh, okay, I'll just dive in and people will either understand it or not understand it. But yeah, I'm not here to particularly be liked. I'm here to be authentic to what somebody wrote, and then bring humanity to it, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
I think what makes horror really interesting, and specifically Bates Motel, it's a situation where you can see it existing in the real world. There's a case to be made for monster movies and all that, but that psychological horror, that deeply disturbing, you can imagine it happening next door. That's what makes really effective horror.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Howl. Speaking of horror.
Oh, it was a twisted take on Little Red Riding Hood, and but an adult version, and a girl who's suicidal, and she's got this she's in an institution, and she has flashbacks to when she grew up and what happened to her. And so it, you end up at the end of the movie not knowing whether this is reality or not reality, and what everything she experienced was real or not real. So it's kind of a twisted psychological thriller that brings you on that journey. And my daughter got to play the young Little Red in it, and then the girl Michelle Martin, who wrote and directed it, played the older version. And they asked me to play. They offered me 2 roles, and one was to play her brother, which was, I was shooting at the time, so I couldn't do that. But there was a smaller role of Levi, and Levi is the alpha wolf who is the dad of this girl, Little Red Riding Hood. And he transforms from, the alpha wolf that's been protecting and watching her whole life. And she doesn't know that she came from a wolf dad that morphs into human and wolf, and then a regular major religious Christian mother who then condemned the girl when she realized that the dad was who he was. So it's kind of weird and twisted, but it intrigues me. I mean, I can breathe in that world.
With your daughter?
Yeah, this is the 3rd movie I've done with her. So awesome. I've done 3 movies, and then she reoccurs on SWAT as the girl who's dyslexic, and so the writers took my story and applied to her, and my character Luca understands it because he had, they wrote it that I found out when I was 14, but had all the same issues. And so the creator, Sean Ryan, knew that about me for like 20 years. And he just thought, you know what, I'm going to dive into this thing with single mom, little girl, and have Luca kind of discover it and try to help her. And that way we could address the whole dyslexia thing. And the weird thing about it is here we're on this adrenal cop show. And when they tested that season, which we got, it tested really high in a lot of places, but that was one of two storylines in that entire season that tested the highest, was the working with the kids that had disabilities. And I thought, how beautiful. I mean, Sean came to me, said, this was one of the highest tested things like this season. And I was like, wow. I go, what a simple thing like that touches a lot more people than and that's a pretty beautiful thing,
In our world, it's obviously 1 in 5, but the rest of the world don't know how to handle us. So as cops, when you're walking onto a scene and you don't fully understand what's going through their head, and you
Right.
and I can feel that, we can feel what other people are going through. We can feel other pain, so you solved half the problem before you walked in there. As
Right.
in real life, most cops can't do that because they're not like you and I on the dyslexic end.
Yep. That's funny you said that, because, from when I was a little kid, part of my OCD was like, I could feel other people's energies and feelings, and they would haunt me, where they would kind of get into me, and I would literally morph into those people. And I thought I would see their hands and their face. It sounds so strange, but I mean, it was like, I was always trying to protect myself from other people's energies, because they would just shoot inside of me. And I felt like I knew everything about them, and I didn't want to feel that, because it was so overwhelming, and it felt violating in a way.
Yep.
So it's funny, as I got older, I can put something up to feel okay around people, but like you say, you also have that sixth sense of it's so weird you said that.
100%. And then my buddy, I brought his kid a signed pennant from the Blackhawks, and I'm like, hey, give it to him. He's like, how did you know he's struggling? I'm like, you don't have to tell me. I can feel it.
Right.
And, sure enough, he's like, you and I, dyslexic, and, other things going on. But my buddy looked at me like I had 10 heads. How the hell did you know that? And that's just, that's what we feel, and we get, people look at me with the old twisted head, like, you're weird, man. Yeah, I am weird, but you know what? I'm here to help people.
I love it. That's a perfect way of putting it. Yeah, I mean, putting it is like, me and my friend Ryan Hurst, and Ryan has a lot of, I have premonitions when I'm awake, and they come true to a T. People, places, things since I was 4 years old. He has them when he sleeps, and they come this to a T. They come true. So we talk in a way that people look at us like we're weird, and they think we're weird. But he and I totally breathe the same air, and we float in these ethers and understand something where everyone's like, you guys are effing weird, man. And I'm like, it's just like, I'm like, oh man, it's just like, we're just, it is what it is. And, but that's funny you said that.
And that's why all your shows that you've done speak to me. Dexter, Law and Order, Scholar Fire, SWAT, that's, you're talking to me in a version of yourself right there by your characters.
Well, thank you. Thanks, man. I mean, some of the shows, and then, it's funny.
Well, you've also, back in the present day, comic book movies, TV shows are everywhere. You can't avoid them. Back in the 90s, Blade was one of the few movies in the genre. Blade really kind of set the tone for everything. You kind of planted your flag early with comic books. You were there for Blade. You're on Smallville. You did the Aquaman pilot. Is there a superhero role you think floating out there?
That would be cool. That would be like so dope if I could do that. I've auditioned for like one or two in big films, but they usually go with name people. So nothing's happened yet. But the Blade thing was that was awesome. That was a one-line thing that turned into the director being from England, just saying, just improvise, make it up as you go. He's just like, just say whatever you want. So I remember talking through like first 10 minutes of that intro of the scene. I made everything up that wasn't written there. And the only thing that was written is where Tracy Lords and I were in the car, and she grabs me between my legs and then says whatever she says. That was the only written thing. Everything else I made up in that thing. And so I thought, when Marvel was about to go under, that show actually, or that movie ended up starting the comeback of what Marvel was, which is wild. I would love to. I mean, again, that genre is really cool and interesting, but they've got, those guys like Hemsworth and you know, a lot of guys that are already huge icons, and the studios usually go with them. But would I like to do something like that? Hell yeah, man. You know,
What would be the ideal character then? You know, if you could pick, who would it be?
Yeah. Fucking, I don't know, man. That's a loaded question. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I remember auditioning for what is that Ryan Reynolds
Deadpool.
those what is it?
Deadpool?
Green Lantern? Deadpool. So for Brolin's role, I mean, I was up for that, but they went with Brolin, and I thought that would be an interesting character to play. You know, I would yeah, I liked him. And then I was gonna go into you know, I mean, it's a different world, but season 4, Glenn Mazzara was running what was it? Walking Dead. Frank Darabont's had just gotten fired, and so Mazzara took over. In season 4, I was going to come on as one of their new characters that were in the comic books, and I was really pumped for that. And then they got rid of him literally before they came back and thought, well, we don't need anybody show running now. It's doing like 17 million viewers a week, so we can self-run it ourselves. And he kind of floored him, and so when he exited, that my character exited, and that was going to be my you know, my jump into that world, but it didn't quite happen. So
here I know, I know your time is valuable. We're, you know, these 10-hour days, drinking nice coffee and Red Bull, and you know, obviously, you know, appreciate it. You know, I got one last question. Would you have any interest in being a part of my foundation, you know, in US, in Canada, around the world, to continue to inspire dyslexics, to, you know, advocate for them there and be there to support them? Would you have any interest to furthering that conversation?
100%, dude.
Beautiful.
100%. 100%. I always want to help, but I don't know who to even talk to help. So the fact that, you know, I was like lucky enough to come on here and probably babble through my stuff, because I talk a lot when I get nervous. So, you know, I would love to help in any way I could.